Except for
Pledge of Allegiance.
No, Gina, you gotta take over, Ramona.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That was an easy one.
All right. Roll call.
Here. Roscoe. Here. Jacob.
Here.
Sierra. Towner.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Here. All right, we'll start with recognitions.
We have recognitions. If Ramona's going to read, does someone want to hand out the certificates with Dr. Freitas? Tom, do you want to go up? And Hector, if you guys can stand up here, and here's your certificates. And if they're not here, we'll give it to them tomorrow.
RB had one finalist in the 2020 National Merit Scholarship Program. About 1.6 million juniors entered the competition by making the 2018 preliminary SAT National Merit Scholarship qualifying test, and approximately 16,000 semifinalists throughout the nation are being recognized for their exceptional academic promise. This student will also have an opportunity to continue in competition for approximately 7,600 National Merit Scholarships worth more than $31 million that will be offered next spring. Congratulations to Lindsay DeJesus.
Nice job, Lindsay.
That's awesome.
Really superstar stuff.
Okay, 5 RB students have been named commended students in the scholarship program. Approximately 34,000 commended students throughout the nation are being recognized. The commended students placed in the top 50,000 scorers of more than 1.5 million students who entered the 2020 competition by taking the 2018 preliminary SAT National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. Congratulations to Ryan Power.
Is Ryan here? Okay, let's hear it for Ryan.
Ricardo Linares.
Ricardo, no.
William O'Brien.
Hey, Will. Nice job, Will.
Good job, Will. Sophia Bowie. And Ryan Encher.
Ryan here. Okay, let's give one more round of applause for all the National Merit finalists. Okay, you just leave those there.
All right. Student Association report.
My favorite part. That's what we're here for.
Hi, we're down 2 people. Omar and Taylor, our president, is fortunately not here. But we probably all met us before. But since our last meeting that we had here, we had a lot of things going on. Headlining would be homecoming. And during homecoming, we had pep rally, or spirit days, which we had a ton of participation. Dr. Freitas can vouch for that. He definitely led the way on that. We had a lot more participation than last year. We also had a penny pinch during all lunches, what we have every year. This year we raised even more than last year. We raised $950, and we donated it to a disease called ME, or chronic fatigue syndrome, that Lizzie Mooney has. She's a student here at RB. She's a freshman. We donated $700 to the foundation, raising awareness, and then we also raised money for her. We sent her an Audible gift card because she likes listening to audiobooks. We gave her a Khalil Mack jersey. She loves the Bears, and just a ton of different RB t-shirts and football t-shirts and stuff like that. And then we also had the pep assembly, which we have every year as well. Freitas loved that one as well, where we had a ton of different activities going on. We had the homecoming court being announced. Winners this year were Ryan Gaynor and Cassie Hines. And then We had students versus teachers dodgeball game where teachers unfortunately won this year. And then to cap it all off, we had the dance, of course, and dance was awesome. We all loved it. It was great.
It's a big turnout this year for the dance?
Yeah, we had over 1,000 people, almost 1,000 people.
Okay. How'd the new DJ work out?
I liked it. It was definitely a new experience. It was more like we were attending a concert than it was a dance, but it was definitely a new experience.
So going back on to Spirit Fridays, this month Spirit Friday it's actually on a Thursday. We're doing it Halloween themed. So all the students can come in Halloween costumes, but school appropriate, of course. No mask, no paint, and yeah, like I said, school appropriate. And they are also hosting a Halloween costume contest during all lunches. So that'll be going
Best
on.
costume?
Yes.
And also, there's a poster back there. I don't know if you guys can see that, but we have a blood drive coming up on Wednesday, November 6th. And next week we're having like registration during all lunches, and we're hoping for like 100 participants, and we usually have that. And we have 2 a year, so this is our first one.
And upcoming for our winter months, we are doing our coat and blanket drive where we collect winter items like hats, scarves, gloves, coats, and blankets, and we donate those to CSS, a local organization. And we also have Santa Anonymous, where we raise money and also collect toys and different items from wish lists that we also give to CSS.
How do you get the word out on the blanket and coat drive?
We make another big banner like that, and I think it's included in some of our announcements and posters around
And
school.
more flyers too.
SA has a Twitter account, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Give it all a follow.
I think I do.
At RPHSSA.
Do you guys have any questions for us?
I don't.
All right, perfect. Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys for coming. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Parents, this is a good time to, unless you want to stay and talk about the audit and other items tonight.
Stay and talk about the audit. Really?
President's report, I don't have one.
No president report. Superintendent's report. Curriculum advisory, no update. Facilities advisory met yesterday. We wrapped up the pool HVAC project. Time permitting, we'll take a little walk tonight with the board so they can see or feel the air quality in the pool. But Tom and Wes, myself, Kristen, Joel Hatchie, the engineer, and Carrie, the architect, called in. We wrapped up the pool project. We began to lay out summer of 2020. So this upcoming summer, we'll be doing our final 3 sections of roofs that need to be completed, and then a few other life safety items that are on the list that need to be completed by 2023. So we'll be trying to get those bids out before the first of the year. And then there's some other documents that Kristen will cover in her report regarding first quarter building rental and quarterly business report from Aramark. Finance advisory, we're trying to get a meeting scheduled prior to the November board meeting to discuss the levy, the staffing, and enrollment projections, and some follow-up questions on the general liability insurance. So I'm working on coordinating that with Mary Ann, Wes, and Ms. Zalis. Personnel advisory, no update. Policy advisory, there's no update. Purchase or lease of land, no update. We have been going back and forth with the zoo, the forest preserve, commissioners, etc., to get try to get a date scheduled. So we're working on that. I've kept Ms. Zalis and Mr. Durkin in the loop on that. And then communication audit. Marianne, if you can go to that chart. The board had asked for a brief audit or on the different tools we're using in communication. It's in board book page 7.
7 and 8, yeah.
And so we've made an effort during my tenure to really try to improve communication. We have the updated website. I'll just go in order across the chart, but what I tried to do here is break down the contact person or primary person who establishes or is responsible for that communication vehicle, the cost, and then the audience that we're reaching or have the capability of reaching. Obviously, the website is our primary hub, and that's where all of our information from the district level through the building level, all the way down to the annual or the daily student bulletins or student BARC are available. From an administrative standpoint, Dr. Freitas, Mr. Mannon, who is student activities and student affairs, Ms. Lindquist, curriculum and instruction, Ms. Augustine, student services, and Mr. Curtin, who handles athletics, all have a Twitter account. And what we have set up, if you look a little bit further down, you can see from a social media standpoint, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And then we pay annually for this program called Zapier. And what that does is that takes all the posts that we put on either Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, and it kind of combines them. So if you are a community member and only have access to our website, there's a place where you can link right on the home page and see all of our Twitter posts. If you only have Facebook, you can see all of our Twitter and Instagram posts because they go directly to our Facebook page as well. So there was some conversation that if somebody in the community doesn't have a certain social media platform, this helps provide like a connection to the other social media platforms and the information that's going out. And so the next thing is the newsletter. That's about $2,700 annually. We have roughly over 400, just under 500 people that are signed up for the newsletter outside of current families. So there is a capability to sign up for our newsletter. There's a link. You just click online. You provide your email address, and then the monthly newsletter is emailed out to those individuals, as well as it goes to all the new current families and current staff members. RBTV, obviously this is a perk. It's an expensive perk, but we do have our own local cable channel where all of our board meetings and past board meetings are televised. We have athletic competitions, different events and activities from the school, telethon, etc., that are communicated throughout. So one thing that we possibly could get a little better on is maybe we run some postings, almost like a commercial, but at least where there's some text updates or some, public announcements of upcoming events or big activities to look for either on Facebook or on the website. Student newspaper, obviously, this is also linked to our website, and they run their own website. So even though we only print 3 to 4 hard copies a year, there is some opportunity to have updated news on a regular basis from the Clarion's website. Then the Skyward, the School Messenger, Schoology, Google Suite phone system. But overall, on a regular annual basis, we spend approximately $62,000 a year on trying to communicate to our stakeholders. And I put a few bullet notes that provided some additional content on the different items that were mentioned in the chart.
So do we know what kind of traffic? Do we know how many people are watching the TV program on cable? Because not everybody has cable or that particular channel. Do we know how many people are following the Twitter?
Twitter, Facebook, and website, we can track how many followers.
Okay.
And if the, you can use Google Analytics to, I don't know if the IT department does, do you have Google Analytics hooked up to the website through EdLeo? Yeah, so then you can tell who's entering, bouncing, all these, there's analytics 25 million ways, I should say.
So the reason this kind of came about was there was some discussion on whether or not we need to do some type of hard copy mailing out to all the households in the attendance boundaries. And I mean, obviously there'll be a cost to that, a manpower impact to that. That's something that if the board wanted to do on a biannual basis, that's something we can consider. But I think, over my time here, there was a big push of trying to get more real time. Like even with the newspaper now, the Sun-Times is like $1.50, but you can get it for a lot cheaper on your iPad or your phone. I mean, print media is somewhat becoming extinct. So, I mean, if that's something we want to go back to, it may be something we need to consider. Or maybe we do once a year, kind of like a state of the district, and we just provide our fiscal year summary and upcoming maybe projects or improvements that people can be aware of to help if they're looking to sell their home or purchase a home. Maybe that's something we can consider doing, an annual report.
I still think we need to get a piece of paper in each of the houses, because during the election, every single event, we had community members ask us questions about, so what kind of outreach programs are students doing? What kind of volunteer projects are students doing at RB? The students at RB are doing many volunteer programs, and that message does not always get out. We were told every single event, whether it was in Riverside or Brookfield, that we are not reaching all the houses. So if it's once a year or twice a year, something that highlights, like our National Merit Scholars, the drives, the coat drives, the different things that the students are doing, and how to sign up for a print newsletter.
But at what cost? At what cost? Like, we already spent $62,000 is what this says. And so I would have to see costs before I could agree to anything like that.
But we spent $21,000 on the cable television, and we're not saying how many people are watching that.
So I have a couple of thoughts. I mean, my first thought is this is a good baseline, and I appreciate it all being put in one spot, because I think that was where our discussion was last time, right? Like, what is all out there? I think maybe to your point, Laura, the next column on here, it needs to be some penetration for the various items. That could be helpful. I mean, I think the RBTV is wonderful. It's not just the local cable access, it's also YouTube. So you're able to do some analytics through the YouTube views. And, from where it's challenging to meet people where they are, right? Not everyone is technologically as savvy as the next person, and I am absolutely open to an annual mailing of some sort, but there's a significant cost to that. I mean, I think we need to look at some other things. On this newsletter, there's 500 households that are getting it that are not current families. Well, what about everyone who graduated last year, right? Are we not keeping the same mailing list year over year? We're almost starting from scratch plus the opt-in. So I think maybe just some thoughtfulness from the administration on what we can do to tighten these up before we talk about expensing something else, I think is appropriate. Because I look at the Twitter feeds and what shows up on Facebook. I know we have this Zapier.
It's Zapier.
Zapier, okay. And I'd be curious to know how that actually works. Because I know last year I was getting Facebook updates of the RB Daily Bulletin. I don't get those this year. So if something changed in the Facebook algorithm or something changed with Zapier, and I'm just not sure we're all getting the same information. So I'd like to think maybe take this to the next level and see what's actually working on here. And so I think it's kind of a combination of what you both have said. I think it's a great start. There's a lot of options out there. There's a lot of access points. How people choose to take advantage of it is one thing, but we also do need to push our message to some extent as well. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, I think we're just missing the stakeholder group that doesn't have children. And that stakeholder group is supporting the school. Mm-hmm. And if we're looking at the newsletter for everybody who graduated last year, they still had children in the district. But there are people who move into this district and don't have kids in this high school, or just don't have kids, or professionals, but yet their tax dollars are supporting this school.
I don't disagree. I just don't think we're at a point to make a decision necessarily, but I agree that we're not capturing everyone with this outreach, but I'm not sure what the solution is either.
So the RBTV, that's also a class, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm. The 19 to 21,000, I believe, is just production cost.
That's
related.
not Gary's salary, that's not.
Correct, it's not.
Well, none of these are going to be salary. None of these are going to be staff
Right.
time.
Right.
So what's the annualized cost for the newsletter then?
2,700.
But what is that? What does it represent?
We use a program called Constant Contact, which is a mailing list. We have a independent person from WordStorm that we pay a small fee to help compile it, shorten it, proofread it, combine the pictures in and everything into the website. And so that is, costs associated with the newsletter.
So, question is the people without the children that we're talking about, are they looking for the school paper? I mean, that has this information in it. Are they looking for the newsletter? Because though sometimes they mix, they're the same information, they're different, and that might be what they're looking for. I mean, I'd
So
rather
there's-
use what we have
Well, there's a combination. At
than
one
build
time-
something new, right?
At one time, everybody got the Landmark or a newspaper, and there was a lot more events from the school in the newspaper. And pretty detailed coverage of the board meetings. And so the senior citizens on the block would come and talk to me about that. And they'd say, oh, I hear this is going on, or I hear that's going on. Well, very few people are getting the Landmark because that went online.
I believe you can still get a print copy, you gotta
I get a-
pay.
Yeah,
You gotta pay,
I
so
get a
they're
print copy
choosing
every
not
week.
to pay.
Right.
You know,
And I don't know that the coverage is the same in the Landmark. And so, I don't know, when we went to those election events, every single event, there were voters in our district who asked us, what are the students doing? And told us they're not getting the information.
and some of those people had cell phones in their pockets, and you know what? I can pull all that up right this second. And even my 83-year-old mother has Facebook.
So what I asked,
So I'm not, like,
I
I
thought-
don't buy that. Like, they can go, if they want to be so informed, they should go and get informed.
Well, when we ran a referendum, you know, not everybody is on their cell phone all the time. Not everybody's going to use the computer, or people who work on the computer all day long are not going to come home and jump back on it. What I am trying to say, and people are telling us, is that we have to have an alternative method for them to find out what's going on, so that if we ever had to do a referendum or ever needed community support, they would know and be partners with us.
I asked Dave briefly just to show us real quick. So Dave, if you start on the first tab, which is the website.
Yes.
And so obviously you have all the quick links with our academics. Don't move too fast, Dave. Quickly. You got the athletics, Clarion, district newsletter, RBTV. You have a one-stop shop, right? We said it serves as our hub. And then under all of our charts, then we have the news and announcements, the upcoming events. And then if you see this Twitter feed, if you click, if any of those accounts post something on Twitter, it all comes to the website. So if you don't have a Twitter account, you don't have a Facebook account, you can still see all the different things they're posting, from games, from competitions, from events in the cafeteria, hallway. All that is posted there for people as a one-stop shop. Now, if you click on Facebook and you're a Facebook member, but you don't go to the RB website, but you follow RB on Facebook, all of that same information, the student bulletin is right there. And then all of our posts from Twitter is also posted as comments. So again, if you don't have Twitter, you don't have Instagram, but you have Facebook and you follow RB, all of that information is placed on Facebook.
But it's still on a computer.
So.
Well, yeah, but I mean, Laura, it is 2019. I mean,
There are
if that was the
people-
case, the Tribune, Sun Times, Wall Street, I mean, they're all
Democracy is a
going-
participation
Yes.
sport.
You know, my father gets 3 newspapers. He reads them every day. He's not on the computer. But he
No.
reads 3 newspapers from cover to cover
So,
every day.
So there's, so.
And he's not alone.
I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree with it at all. I just think there's a cost to mailing the newspaper out to everybody in the neighborhood. I think that's probably something we need to evaluate, and do we want to spend the money that way? Because we are stewards of the taxpayer. Maybe it's worth it to send it to them, maybe it's not, but maybe it's worth it to put a stack in the town hall or the library or somewhere that we can reach people and say, we have it at the library or something. You know, there's different options and ways to shake this up.
I agree.
And back to
Maybe as far as,
Deanna's point is,
post-
what are we doing correctly? What are we not doing
I
correctly?
think we need to drill
sharpen
down a
that
little bit
saw.
with what we have here. I agree we need to reach people where they are, right? We can't spoon feed everyone. I hear what you're saying, but we also need to make things accessible to people in a format that ultimately helps them support the organization.
Sure.
And if we get information here that shows, the penetration on the website plus Twitter plus Facebook plus Instagram is all, skin deep, and it's only the RB community, then we're not reaching out to a larger audience. So I'd like to know what some solutions could be short of an actual mailing, which has huge cost. Maybe it is a stack at the town hall or the township hall or at senior events or something along those lines. Of the newsletter, we're already spending some amount of money on. And I don't know what the answer is, but I think the reason we asked for this, we can't lose sight of, is that we all had a sense that, we don't quite know what's out there and we don't quite know how to capture our message. We have a very good message. Is it getting out there?
Yeah, we thought we had a sense that you brought to our attention. I think we all got it from that election, that we're not doing it right.
Right, and tell me
So-
I'm lying.
so
Every
let's think
single
about how to do it
event,
better.
we were called on it.
Right, well, I think it was the same a couple of years ago. That didn't change. and we
One
said,
an
"Well,
easy
we're getting there."
an easy fix that I could recommend is maybe we budget or we use out of our board account $1,000 roughly, and maybe on a quarterly basis between the Suburban Life and the Landmark, we purchase a decent size ad, encouraging people to either check us out on Facebook or log, the link to our website where they can log. If they're reading the hard copy, they can see like, hey, if you want to get the monthly newsletter, the instructions to go to the website, click on the newsletter. Here's our Twitter account, all the different things. Maybe if we put some advertisements in the hard newspapers over the next couple of months, encouraging people, we can see if our viewer or our following went up at all.
Can you put together a cost analysis of what it would cost to send out, say, what would that be? 4-page, right, like, just like this, black and white, and then a like this color mailing to every house in the district. So the printing and the mailing costs.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have to figure out how we're going to get those. I think there'll be some personnel costs that we have to figure into that as well.
Okay.
We don't have a communication person.
We can estimate that though, and we can
Yeah,
get
just
a
some
general
estimates.
idea, I
Okay.
think. And then a couple different ideas. What is the ads and the Landmark cost?
I mean, we're
What is
talking
that?
about having a
Depends on how
retreat
much
now in
space
February.
you
How do
want.
we
Yeah.
get people to that retreat? I think in some ways, it's probably through an ad in the paper, right? We need to reach some people
Right.
in the group that's not being reached by this currently. And then maybe that's a question we pose to that group is, what is a good way to communicate?
Do we have a separate tab on on our website for community members and stakeholders?
Dave, go to the
where we
website.
can provide just pertinent,
Yep.
okay.
The whole
There's
thing.
alumni
There's
after
a lot
hours
there.
and emergency
Okay.
facilities rental part, yeah.
So Bill also had an idea too that you shared, and we might want to also investigate, partnering with some of the communities. They send out their newsletters. And if we were to say, what would it cost us to have a page in that?
And maybe
Sure.
we can piggyback off of.
Because
Right. They're
Small
probably looking
percentage. They're looking
to
to
share
offset
some
costs.
costs, and
Yeah.
we can pick up some, and sure.
Who still sends out the hard letters?
the library in Brookfield sends out a hard letter.
I was about to say the library.
The
I love that.
library-
I mean, I
library in
cut the little
Riverside and the
pieces out and I
township-
put it up.
Township governments do it, and the library district in North
Yeah.
Riverside. and
So
Brookfield.
if we work something with the Riverside Township, it was because then it covers both Riverside and Brookfield, I think?
Nope.
Or there's portion?
Brookfield, where I'm at is Proviso Township.
Okay.
And then you got all of LaGrange Park. I believe that's Proviso
Okay.
as well.
All right, we got some other items we gotta.
Right. That was a nice discussion. That was good.
I'll come back with some follow-up information in either November or December meeting.
Principals report. Follow that, Hector.
Good evening, honorable board members and Dr. Skinkis. Here's my principal's report updates and how Riverside Brookfield is winning every week. Just 2 weeks ago, we experienced a fantastic homecoming week. From spirit days wherein students and staff dressed in pajamas and movie stars to a victorious football game. Another quick update, the football team just qualified for the state playoffs, so congratulations to the football team and Coach Curtin. As well as a dance. We had approximately 1,000 students. I did want to thank the Student Association. They left to do their homework, but I did want to thank them. And I also wanted to thank Angela Ziola and Michelle Kaler, the sponsors of Student Association. Last week, the boys and girls cross country team volunteered at the 2019 Chicago Marathon. I want to thank Coach Brian Jensen, Armando Venegas, and Coach Enright for a fantastic job. You guys would have been proud of our young men and women representing RB well, giving those cups of water to the top runners in the world. I also want to thank and acknowledge the Fall Choral Festival. For those that were here, it was a packed house. Every single seat was taken. People were standing. The parking lot was packed. But those are good problems to have when there's not enough seats and there's not enough parking spots. I want to thank Aubrey Prince, James Bond, Spencer Fry, and all of our feeder schools, Comaric, S.E. Gross, and Hauser. And we actually had guests from Lyons, Washington Middle School. So I want to thank them all. My next announcement is Coffee with the Principal. I'll be hosting my next Coffee with the Principal on Tuesday, November 21st from 9 to 10 a.m. and in December, Monday, December 16th from 9 to 10 a.m. That's an opportunity for parents to engage me, to give me feedback and constructive criticism as well about how we're running things here at Riverside Brookfield. I'm proud to say that at our first Coffee with the Principal in October, we had approximately 21 parents attend. This Thursday, we have parent-teacher conferences from 12 to 4 and 5:30 to 8. Parents, I've asked that if you can, please print the report cards via Skyward. We will also print some here and have a kiosk, but if you can, please print the report cards. This Friday is also a special day. October 25th is an Institute Day. Riverside Brookfield High School begins the journey of being a trauma-sensitive school through the learning of trauma-informed care. The professional development training will be led by Dr. Jill Reedy, Assistant Superintendent at Macon Pierre Regional Office of Education. What is trauma-informed care? It's an awareness of the prevalence of trauma, an understanding of the impact of trauma on physical, emotional, and mental health, as well as on behaviors and engagement to services and learning, and an understanding that current educational systems and practices either help or re-traumatize students. So we're really excited that Riverside Brookfield, the teachers, the administration, will begin the journey of trauma-informed care to best support all of our students. Those are my announcements for this evening, and if there's no further questions, I would like to invite Ms. Jennifer Moritzen. Ms. Jessica Moritzen, who will describe her unique pedagogy and how it's impacting here the students at Riverside Brookfield High School.
Come on up, Jessica.
Hi there. Want me to sit or?
Sure.
I have a lot of us, but.
I'm assuming these are your handouts for the day.
So I gave you some handouts because I'm doing something totally different this year. I was lucky enough to attend a OWL conference, which is basically organic world language. And it has transformed my classroom just to, it's the most joyous I've ever been in class, and I think I've seen the students being really joyous too. What you have in front of you is Spanish 1. The first page specifically, the students never even taken a Spanish class before. And I was just so impressed with it. I basically have no desks and no chairs in my classroom, and it sounds really weird, but the premise is, it's very communicative. When language happens, you're talking. You have to be talking all the time. You're communicating with people. You're you're based on content. And I have so many students, and the premise is that they are talking all the time. And they're listening to me. It's completely immersive, so I don't speak any English. And the first week, I didn't speak any English, and I played games with them. But it was all in Spanish. And so the first week, I got some weird looks at me, but they're trying to infer what you're saying, just like you would do with someone who doesn't speak another language. You have to try and figure out what they're saying. And it's all comprehensible based. So it's based on research by Stephen Krashen, who's a linguist, and basically saying that if you can't understand what's happening in the classroom, you're not going to be understanding the language. So the first week I taught them all about just building a community. That was the most important thing, so they have a safe place. And then I taught them about how language acquisition occurs in English, and I kind of broke it down. And so now we're guided by the principles of language proficiency. So the kids just end up doing an online portfolio, and that was one of their submissions, was writing. And then the second part was speaking, and then in Schoology they evaluated their own proficiency level. So I'm a novice low, I'm a novice mid, this is where I am. I'm listing, I'm describing, and kind of the goal is to push themselves up the proficiency scale. So
I thought it was kind of one day I'm walking by Jessica's classroom and it's just an empty room. And there's all these kids like walking around, or some sitting on the radiator, some sitting on the floor, and seeing Norma Ritson, what's going on? I got my 5 words I still remember from my freshman Spanish class. I would go in there, and so Dr. Freitas and I wanted to highlight, and that's something we're going to try to do more throughout the year, is bring teachers and the great things they're doing in their classrooms during the principal's report to the board for recognition. So Jessica's doing an outstanding job. So Hector, thank you for bringing Jessica forward and recognizing her. And Jessica, you've done a great job. You're also really big with the Chromebooks, I know.
Yeah,
there was
today-
something was it this year you were doing, or was last year where they were Skyping or doing something?
Yeah, so I got my National Geographic certification last year, and we ended up Skyping with Paul Rose, who's a Arctic explorer, and we had a conversation with a man who's walking, I think it's like for 10 years, he's doing slow journalism all around the world. So we did a Skype with him. We were on, it's called Exploring Through the Seat of Your Pants. And so there's just so many opportunities. I've really been very fortunate. The administration has been really supportive. This Ms. Lindquist over here, I've asked her a million times for just different ideas, and she's been so supportive. And I've just had so much fun at the school. It's really, this year is just, like I said, it's opened so many doors. I think every year has been even more different. And we're going to be presenting, my colleague and I are going to be presenting on service learning in the classroom this Friday at our regional Illinois Council of Foreign Languages, and then I'll be presenting on this new methodology, OWL. I'll be doing 2 sessions there as well. So I'm really excited. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you, and thanks for all the support. It's been really fun.
And you recently just got a grant, you told me today?
I just got a grant. Yeah, I got a kindness grant today, which
to help with communication.
It's for the school. It's based on the butterfly effect of one person can, when a butterfly flaps its wings, a small change can happen. So I applied for this. We've been working with this organization called We, and they provided us free speakers, and we get to go to We Day at the Allstate Arena. Nice. And so they had this grant along with Hershey's, and I thought, I'm just going to apply for it. And so we got a $250 grant to see how our students can make the biggest change. And I'm working with the administration to figure out how we can do that. So I'm really excited.
It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Jessica, and if I could just add, I'm so proud of you because your pedagogy aligns with science. Oracy facilitates literacy. As a former language teacher, I see this writing. This is level 2, level 3 stuff doing in year 1. So I'm so proud of your efforts. I'm so proud of your instruction. You're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you,
Keep
Dr.
it up.
Freitas. I really appreciate it. Appreciate all of you.
Yeah, I can't believe this comes from first year.
Well, I have to say, too, the prompt for that, I actually got that from ISTE. They have an amazing organization. So I got it from Twitter, actually. It was an alternate assignment, and the assignment was, show me what you know. And so that's all I told them. There was nothing else, and they just sat there, and some kids came in after school, and they said, I didn't get to fill in enough. I want to do more. And some kids decided to draw because they wanted to show, I don't know how to say this, but I know how to do this. And again, the goal is just to push their proficiency as high as they can. And I have kids with special needs in this class with IEPs, so it's been really fun and really enjoyable and very different, but I wouldn't have been able to do it without the support of the administration to really try something new and jump in wholeheartedly. So thank you.
Great job. Does the board have any other questions for Jessica?
Is this only for first year Spanish, or is
This
it
is level 1
level
after 8 weeks, I think.
Okay.
This is a picture of the classroom.
Yeah, and then I included some pictures in the back.
We had a video, but it wasn't.
I did have a video, and they will be on RBTV. Dr. Freitas and Zach Cameron from RBTV have been working really hard to highlight our classroom and kind of seeing what's going on. But that was today. The kids were they were playing with songs. And after we did our portfolio on Schoology, I said, how else can you push your language outside the classroom? And some of them said flashcards and things like that. And I said, well, okay, how many of you are actually going to do flashcards? What about songs, and what about authentic things like watching a show? So I compiled a whole bunch of music together, and the kids were singing today in the classroom. So that big, long picture is them singing some of the songs, and I heard them outside the classroom. I had to close the door because they're so loud. And it looks like play, but it's so comprehensible because they're going along with the actions, or they decided to sing, and it's all levels. So even it's looking at what they can do and not what they can't do.
So, just a question, Brad. When you think of a traditional or an older style language class, there's learning the verbs and how to conjugate that. How does that get assessed, or is it necessary to get assessed? Or
So our state standards actually just changed. They're aligned with world language state standards, and so they're proficiency based. And so it is, but we realized that, again, what Dr. Freitas was saying, based on the most current research is that it's the content that matters more. And when you get the content and you start talking about things, it comes naturally. Like these kids, I didn't explicitly teach them verbs, but we talked and we had conversations just like we're doing now or just like we do with our children. And so it naturally occurs. And so while you might focus on more of that at the later levels, the most important stuff now is the content, creating thicker sentences. Right now, like a novice, a low might just be able to list, and then we're working towards describing. So constantly pushing them up that, it comes naturally. So it's a little bit different from how it used to be.
Jess, great job.
Thank you.
Foreign language wasn't that fun in the 80s, I'll tell you that.
No.
So we got, Kylie has to give her academic data report, and then we have Chris, the auditor, who will go before Chris and gives her CFO report.
Okay.
So. Hi, Kylie.
Well, hi again.
Is this your first board meeting this year?
This is 3 in a row. Mary Ann's making me my own nameplate for next time.
Oh,
Just
boy.
fair warning.
All right, so Kylie's academic data is on 10, is that right?
I don't know.
Board book 10?
Sorry.
Whatever you say. Yes, 10.
Kylie, do you want the board to see your memo first or go right into your charts?
I think you can go right into the charts.
Okay.
So again, hello everyone. Happy to be here to present academic data to you. The first document that you're going to see in your packet and board book details the SAT scores as the performance indicator. And while there isn't a current board goal associated with SAT, I know that that's something that's coming. And since it is the measure of assessment that is reported on the school report card, I wanted to touch on this first because this is really how the state of Illinois, one of the measures that the state of Illinois uses to determine how well our school is doing. So what you can see first in the first chart is a breakdown of average SAT composite and section scores. So broken down the composite on a range of 4 to 1600 and then broken down ERW and math. I have our previous 2 classes of data there to the right of the blue highlighted column. The first class that took the SAT for us when that data started appearing on the school report card was 2018. So I wanted to include all of the years that we've administered that test at the junior level. While SAT doesn't provide a composite benchmark, in theory what you can do is look at the idea of the 480 and the 530 being college ready, add those together, and then you can look at what college readiness in both of the subject tests translates to in terms of a composite score. So when you see under the additional information, there's just some detailed explanation in terms of what College Board considers college ready. So students who are meeting or exceeding that benchmark have a 75% chance of earning at least a C or better in a college-bound course that's connected to that subject test. So that's kind of the benchmark, what we're talking about when College Board's considering someone college ready. When you look at the bottom there, the way that SAT reports its data is to report not only on average scores for the composites and for the subject test, but also to look at what percentage of our student population met benchmarks, met either the math benchmark or the reading benchmark, or met both of those, and then they also publish the number of students who met neither one of those benchmarks. So where you look at the highlighted column, you can see the class of 2020, so we're talking about our current senior class. And what makes me excited and very proud of our teachers and our students and our efforts toward the SAT is being able to see that class of 2020, we're talking about increases in all areas, except for the one decrease, which is the decrease we want to see, which is the number of students who are meeting neither benchmark for SAT. So we've put a lot of energy into what goes into that score, talking about giving practice tests at the sophomore level, giving the full SAT suite when students come to register for Riverside Brookfield High School. We give them a placement exam that is the PSAT 8-9. The students took that last Saturday. So we are using a full suite of assessments to be able to track student progress as they come in, and then at the 9th grade level, the 10th grade level, and the 11th grade level, so we can know where we want to put our resources, know what students need to go into our CAP class for a little bit of extra support. When you take a look at some of the plans that we have to increase our performance on the SAT, the Leadership Council and I, which is our building administration and our instructional coaches, have talked all of first quarter about a very conscious, purposeful, intentional SAT focus across the board in all of our classes in terms of what we are doing in our fine arts classes and our world language classes. How are those skills translating to supporting our students being college ready? I had a long talk today with Patricia Reeves talking about when she first heard from her instructional coach, okay, we're going to put this SAT focus in second quarter, she thought, okay, as the German teacher, what am I doing here? And we talked about the fact that everything she does in German is leading them right to that evidence-based reading and writing test, because they are conjugating verbs, they are working with punctuation, they are learning language and how to express themselves. It might be a different language, but the principles are very similar and translatable. So that's something that we've been talking about, really pushing purposeful, meaningful, intentional support in to all of those classes. I will say this again, and I've said it before, the SAT feels so different than the ACT. When I taught test prep as a teacher and ACT was the focus, I was teaching kids how to beat a test. 100%. I was teaching them how to beat a test. I wasn't working on their skills because that's the kind of test that the ACT was. And with the SAT being our high stakes assessment, it much more closely aligns to curricularly what we do in a school, what is good instruction and what students really need to learn and know to be successful when they leave. So SAT is really about looking at your whole curriculum and looking about what everything a student does during the course of a day and how that builds their skill level up, rather than me telling a student, just read the first parts of the answers, because if you just look at the performance verb, you can figure out they're trying to trick you. So it's a much more curricularly based assessment. There were a couple of questions about some of the plans that we have to increase our performance. One was about how do we provide staff members with embedded time to take a sample SAT test or to talk to their colleagues about what are you doing in your class that I might be able to make work in my class. We have our PLC time, and that's certainly something that we use for that reason. Institute days, since I got here, we've really tried to intentionally carve out some department time at Institute days for a little bit more than that 40 minutes. 35, 40 minutes is, once you get started on something and you're kind of screeching to a halt. So we try to build in some embedded time in Institute days as well. Last year we did things a little bit differently, and I sat down with Lindsay Minot, the instructional coach of the math department. I said, we really need to make some gains in math, and we need to take a look at our math curriculum across the board, and we need to see vertically how we align and where we could really hit some topics earlier that we might need to hit earlier, or just kind of see it all in front of us. And so we subbed the whole math department out last year, and they spent an entire day in front of a whiteboard and with all of their materials, and collaboratively they mapped out, when I walked into the room, it was on all of the whiteboards in the room, they mapped out what they do at every single level so they could see gaps and they could close them, and they could see repetition and they could figure out if that was necessary repetition or accidental. And if you look at what happened with our math scores, there was an increase there. And so what we're seeing is very intentional vertical alignment and planning and collaborative conversations between colleagues about what we're doing in our classrooms will does support our students' skill development and their progression toward mastery of a particular skill. I will never think we have enough embedded time, and the educators on the board will probably understand and agree with that. So we have talked as a leadership team about, how do we carve out more time to really make sure that we are having those critical conversations as colleagues and that we're pushing one another to push our students. We've talked about the possibility, do we need our Thursday late starts to be a little later so that we can extend our PLC time? I have done some research into what we need to do to pull off school improvement days that are allowed under IASB to give our teachers some opportunity to do that work. I came from a school district who had a school improvement plan because, our scores weren't where we wanted them to be. So we were mandated school improvement days, but we still have the option to do that as a very successful school as well. It's not something that's reserved for struggling schools. So we're continuing to look at how we carve out more time. And for me, after seeing the collaboration in the math department under Lindsay's leadership and really what that translated to in actionable steps in the classroom and how that translated to student success, that's the proof for me, again, that collaboration between colleagues and really talking through what's best practice and how to advance student skill, that's where our success really lies in that area.
Kylie, you had a question submitted about,
Yep.
do you want to present that real quick?
So I made a copy for all of you. There was a question submitted about trying to correlate SAT score with class rank. And so I made a quick table last night to try to take a look at this. So that's what you have in front of you is the answer to that question. What you will see, we had 419 students in the senior class who are ranked. And so I had Sherry pull a Skyward report for me that gave me a list of all the seniors and their class rank as right next to their SAT score. So what I did was I took the top 10% of our students and I averaged that subgroup's SAT score. And so the average score there is a 1367. Remember, that's on a scale of 1600. So I also wanted to give you a little bit of extra context so that you can see what the top and the bottom is, right? So our top 10% of our students, which is around 42 students, their lowest composite score is 1240, and the student in our school who scored the highest on their SAT got a 1530 out of 1600. So then I just went down and broke it out, the next 10% of students, what was their average at 1240, what was their range. The really interesting thing on this is if you look at the part of the chart where it says 31 to 40% and 41 to 50%, and your immediate reaction might be that those two numbers are flipped because the composite average for that 31 to 40% of students is 1079 and 41 to 50 is 1091. That isn't inaccurate. It is an accurate score. And I think that alone right there shows you that it's not necessarily your top ranked students who score the highest on their SAT. There's a lot that goes into grades. Grades is kind of a big hot button topic in education in general right now, and I think it's for this reason. Talking about the integrity of grades and what do we mean when we say that a student is receiving an A? What does that mean? What can they do because of that? So that little blip right there in the data shows that a student could be all A's because they are a doer, right? You give me hoops and I'm gonna jump through it. And
I do a lot of extra credit.
I'm gonna do all the things that you want me to do. And then you have some students who don't do school. They're not connected to school. They're not homework doers. They come because they need to come. But then they sit for an SAT test and you see their scores and you go, whoa, hold on a minute. So you have those anomalies that make some of this data not necessarily that reliable in terms of a predictor of SAT success, but it at least gives you an idea of where our students are falling and how they're ranked and where their SAT scores fall within that ranking system.
So quick question. So we have by class 2018, 2019, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have the ability, because they've now taken the full suite of SAT tests, to see their relative growth?
Right, in the cohort, right, follow that cohort all the way up.
Because I guess I'm, instead of taking one class versus another class,
Right.
is how did this class do as 8th graders versus today as seniors? Is that a different way to look at it? Am I?
No, it's
Yeah.
certainly, yes.
Yeah.
There may be some, and I'm pretty sure that is something that it just might take us a little bit to get into that. And I'm hoping that that's something, it's no secret, and Dr. Skinkis knows this, Ramona knows this too. When we look at the SAT goal in the future, I am hoping with all hope that we are looking at a growth goal, right? That we are looking at what are we able to do with our students from the time that they get into our door till the time that they leave us, from 9th grade to 11th grade. what does that picture look like? So that is certainly something that as the board develops an SAT goal, absolutely, I think it's part of our due diligence to look at it in that vein, absolutely.
Okay, if you pull that together, then I could just send it out on a future Friday update.
You don't want me to come back?
Let's have
You know what, December you can come back. You want
Oh, okay, yeah,
around the
let's do
holiday
it.
season.
Let's do it, I'll bring gifts.
This is what I deal with. On TV, thank you.
As you're talking, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. So when we're looking at SAT, and we're looking at benchmark, this is minimum threshold, correct?
This is considered college readiness, yes.
But college readiness means a 75% chance of getting a
Yes.
C. So my concern is, if 100% of our students met benchmark, that would just mean that they have a 75% chance of getting a C. Doesn't mean we're excellent, nor does it give us any indication that we're excellent or at what level of excellent we're at. Like the National Merit Scholars we had, or the honorees that just came, they achieved this goal that very few students, in the United States can achieve. My concern is that we present these numbers and, they're passing, everybody's passing. If everybody's gonna go to college and just get a C,
Sure.
that's not, I don't think that's our goal.
We only have 55% of our students meeting both benchmarks. So we're not even at everybody passing yet.
So what do we have anything from this test that also gives us insight into excellence, not just minimum threshold, but into, we have a large cohort that go to Champaign, and they have to have certain scores and meet certain benchmarks. We had students matriculate into some prestigious schools. What do we have that would give us any indication that if you come to RB and you do well here, that you could matriculate into some of these schools you might like to go to?
In terms of the SAT, there isn't something that's set, short of, the higher you get, because if you're looking at that sheet that I gave you, you're talking about just that college readiness benchmarks being 10-10, right? And we know that this test is out of 1,600. Short of knowing that the higher you get toward that 1,600, the more rare your score is, because you are, getting up into the 80th percentile, the 85th percentile, the 90th percentile. There's not anything that College Board presents that says beyond that benchmark, like here is another mark that might accelerate you into college. A lot of districts are going now to talking about the profile of a graduate in terms of, what does a successful graduate from X school look like? In my CADCA group, there's lots of emails flying back and forth about schools that are starting to put together a profile of a graduate. I think that's something that we can look at in terms of what do we consider to be that success marker that we could put forth. College Board just isn't going to do that for us. I do think that as we start looking at the vast college and career readiness indicators that ISB is going to begin holding us accountable for, freshmen on track, things of that nature, I think we're going to get closer to that because there will be different benchmarks that are considered college and career ready. So it won't just be the test. It will be meeting benchmark on the test and successfully completing a career exploration activity and completing an internship activity. Certain different monikers that are going to go on the school report card with regard to career and college readiness indicators. But like I said, we might have to figure out how we want to package that and present it so that we can showcase those successes of our students.
Kylie, you want to go into your other?
So the third page of that report is
AP?
Caught everything. Yes, is the AP students with passing scores. So our district goal is that 100% of our AP students score have at least one score that is a 3 or higher. Class of 2019, we were sitting at 72.4% of our AP students were getting a 3 or higher in at least one test. This is always a tricky measure for me to report on because what I know to be true is that RB is an open access school, right? So we do not have barriers for students to take AP courses. There are schools that have barriers for students to take AP courses because if you let just anybody in, then you don't necessarily know what your average pass rate is going to be. We are a school that since I arrived here, continuously we are reaching out to students to say, challenge yourself, stretch yourself, see what the experience is like. The experience is more valuable than the test score, which is what College Board would say. That's their message with AP. They are an open access entity. So what that does though is the more and more and more students that we enlist to take an AP course, the more likely it is that some of them are stretching. I have students that are sitting in AP statistics right now, so an AP level math at the senior level, who started out in extended algebra. That, to me, the fact that you came from extended algebra where you were struggling, you were in an intervention, and now you're sitting in an AP statistics class in your senior year, that is a victory in and of itself, regardless of what you get on that AP test. So we're acting for and against each other in a way because we're putting more students in for the experience, and that has the ability to potentially impact how many of our students are passing those classes. So I put some numbers in there just so you could see. We had 27 more students, 144 more exams taken. So we're talking about pretty significant increases year over year. We break this data down. If you look at that second chart, we break this data down by department. We do not do it by subject test or content test, and that has been a question in the past. The reason that we break it down by department and content specific is because in some cases, for example, there is one teacher, one class that might be taking an AP test. So for example, Juan Tinoco teaches AP Spanish literature, and he's the only person that does it. So if I sat up here and I said, AP Spanish literature has X number of pass rate, now I'm putting Juan's teaching data and the data of maybe 22 of his students on TV and announcing it publicly. And that gets into some sticky situations with students' records and really putting our teachers at the forefront of that kind of vulnerability. So we report by department because we're looking at how all of the courses within a department. So when you look at English, our pass rate, AP Language and AP Lit feed into that pass rate for that very reason. We offer AP tests. This was a question also. We offer AP tests and courses to levels 10 through 12. So our freshmen do not take AP courses. We want to get them into the building. We want to get them acclimated. We want them to understand what a rigorous high school experience looks like before we start throwing AP classes at them. We have had exceptions in the past. Last year, we had a student who was an 8th grader coming over to take math with us because he was double accelerated, who sat for an AP computer science class because he wanted to try it out, never sat for the class, and he got a 5. So, and I think his math teacher's comment to me was, his brain works like a computer. So there are anomalies there, but across the board, our students take AP classes in levels 10 through 12. One thing that's a little concerning that I will say when we talk about our plans to increase AP enrollment and pass rate, I think this comes back to that kind of double-edged sword where I say we're sort of battling ourselves. We want more kids in, but we want the pass rate to be higher too. This year, more than my last few years here, I have signed more drop slips for students who loaded up on the APs and then got into the classes and went, whoa, nope, I'm not doing this work. My most concerning one was a student, and on the form it said they were dropping an AP class, and the reason they listed was class is too difficult, not what I expected, current grade B+. So we are also fighting kind of an internal battle with the fact that we do have students who intend to go into an AP class, maybe for the grade bump, right? Because we have a weighted grading scale. So, that's something that we have to take into consideration. And as much as we want more of our students to take an AP opportunity, we want to make sure that that's right for them as well. Because what's right for our students, in my mind, outweighs getting a certain amount of numbers on a paper to say, this is how many kids took an AP class. Right now, the instructional coaches and I are in the process of creating profiles for each of our courses. And once all of our requests come in for next year, we are going to pull students in and we're going to talk to them about what does an AP experience look like and what can you gain from that experience and what is that going to demand of you when you go into an AP class and what does it mean for you if you're a senior and 5 of your classes are AP. It means that you're going to be hanging out at home doing homework most nights, right? And you're going to be preparing for a test. What we want to try to avoid is students overloading themselves with APs and then getting so frustrated and so bogged down that they drop and take a study hall. Because now you're not getting any skills. Maybe if you took psychology instead of AP psychology, if that was more appropriate for you, you would actually still be in the class learning skills and getting something that's going to move you to the next level. So we're really looking at our AP enrollment very seriously to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to students beyond just getting them in the class, but really letting them and their families know what is that going to look like once you're there.
Kylie, somebody could get an A in an AP class and get a 1 on the test.
Correct.
So should we be reporting maybe 2 sets of data? So one of the encouragement is that you take the AP class so that you're prepared to take a college class, and not all students even have to take the AP test. They can still get an A in the class. Doesn't necessarily mean they'll do well in the test.
So are you saying should we present 2 sets of data? Are you talking like test pass data and grade data?
Yeah, maybe, because if we value the AP experience, and we have said we do, and I know from my own children, I value that. They took the test as an exercise, but it didn't matter. What mattered that they took the course.
Yeah, so I don't know if we need to report on their grade data. We got to be careful.
Well, no, but I mean, how many of our students,
enrollment in AP classes,
or how many are passing the class, not necessarily getting a 5 on the test?
I think it's a correlation of grade in the class to the AP test.
Yes,
right? So
because we might have many more students doing fairly well in their AP classes, getting that experience that we said that we're supporting, and not as many doing as well on the test.
So what do you think, Kylie? Is there a correlation? A's get 5s and B's get 4s?
No.
because some people aren't. Same thing with the SAT data.
Yes.
Some people aren't test takers.
Right.
Some people are.
And you know what? Historically, education in a lot of ways has been, I think it's moved away from that, but education has been, to a certain degree, a separation of do and won't do in some instances. And that is why some schools are really moving away from traditional grades, because they want it to be more about what can I do when I get out of here. When I taught AP myself, there was always a differential between, my students could have had A's all through and then sat for the exam and gotten a 2. And that forced me to look at my grades, right? That forced me to look at myself as a teacher and say, what am I telling my kids, right? Am I telling my kids? So I had to be very careful about how I communicate that. And I think our teachers do a good job of that, of helping students understand the difference between what you do in a classroom and the performance that you do on that test. But I don't think there's a strong correlation. I wish there was more of a predictor, right? But, at the end of the day, if you're, we have 2 weeks of AP exams even. So at the end of the day, you're a senior and your exam is the last day in week 2, and you already know in your brain that the school that you've already committed to, because you know where you're going to school by May at that point, you already know that they're not going to give you any credit for that class. So when I go in, what do my bubbles look like? I'm ready to be done. I want to graduate. We can't control for those kind of things.
You look like a dinosaur.
Right, exactly. I've seen some good pictures, Wes. I really have.
Kylie, just to keep these moving, if there's no other questions that go on to ACT.
So the last indicator is the ACT, and it is still a district goal, and I know that that is something that's going to be transitioning. I put it on here last because, if I'm being very honest, ACT hasn't mattered to our kids for a while. We started testing them on the SAT additionally with the class of 2018, and I will tell you that the years where you give students a practice ACT, an SAT, a practice SAT, and an SAT, by the end they're just like, you jokers, leave me alone. Like, they don't want to test that anymore. So while this data is relevant because it's something that speaks to a board goal, we have not had a concentrated effort around it at ACT for a couple of years because the state is measuring us by SAT. We did get some adjusted data from ACT, which adjusted our 2019 average score up to 22 from 21.7. So what you're seeing there is back to 2012, what the average score was. One of my instructional coaches reminded me today that 2017 was the last year that we gave students a full year of CAP class. It's a semester course now, so we're talking about a point at which we went from preparing our most struggling students for a full year to now at max them having that semester of preparation on top of whatever else they might do, right? Maybe Huntington Learning, Sylvan, maybe RB Prep that we offer. And then we always tell a growth story. So we're looking at ACT expects a growth of 5 points a year. That's what they consider to be standard in terms of their benchmarking. So with that bump to 22, we are still meeting what is expected growth for our students. Which I think, especially with 2 years of not putting a lot of effort behind ACT and our students knowing that ACT is not the measurement by which we are measured, is a big deal. We actually checked with Beth Augustine to say, like, aren't kids still taking the ACT though, right? Like, aren't they still doing both? And from a student services perspective, she's saying really no. They're really, when we transitioned to the SAT, they really transitioned with it. And we're not seeing students that are wanting to go out and take the ACT as much.
So I think when we do our retreat, we need to get some information from our families because the colleges were still asking for ACT and grant money was still attached to ACT scores. And if you had a recent student going into college, money came at 28 and 30. Anything higher?
I think a lot of that's changed. I think a lot of schools now are taking either SAT, actually more shifted to the SAT. We also have some schools now that are doing super scoring with ACT.
I think that was ACT's way of trying to get skin back in the game.
Yeah, a lot of things have shifted in the last 3 to 4 years.
Well, I think that's something as a board we need to, when we do our retreat, probably spend some time with the community to find out and then maybe ask Beth, what are colleges asking for?
Yeah, I would recommend we bring Beth in before the retreat so the board's educated on what the trends are. Maybe when Kylie comes back in December, Beth can join.
I can bring Beth.
See, you already
She's probably walking.
Bring a friend.
Sorry, Beth.
You open the door.
Call a friend. That's what we're gonna do.
There you go.
We midday man to come. It's gonna be a real party.
I'm all for it.
All right, let's do it.
Student impact from attendance to SAT success.
They're gonna kill me tomorrow. After I'm hiding in your office.
Put that on a color-coded bar graph.
Yeah, Kylie, what was on the last page?
The last page was the college readiness indicators. So what you see there is the percent of students that were meeting benchmarks for composite, overall, and then English, math, reading, and science. So you can take a look at, that's the percentage of our students who scored that score in parentheses at the back of that benchmark.
It's a lot of data. Kylie, great job. We always save you for the last goal report of the year because we know you enjoy reporting out on all these items. We are looking at some of the district goals throughout the year. Obviously, the board's retreats in February. So we'll continue to take your recommendations. Obviously, I think you heard about the growth, and I think what you're showing here on the EPAS growth is what the board wants to see, something similar with SAT.
Sure, yep.
Right, I think Deanna asked a great question of like, well, if we can see where they came in on the entrance exam as a freshman and how they did as a junior.
Yep.
If we're meeting what SAT says we should be doing or exceeding that. That's where we should be trying to get 100%.
Yes, and considering, I think we have to make a consideration for, what we do with students when we have them for 3 years, knowing that we do get a lot of transfers in. And we know anybody that works in any school, you know that you have control only over what happens in your building, right? Only over what you're able to do with students when they're in front of you. Do you want me to go into classes?
We had a last, this was a request by some of the board members, just when we went over course guide. I think I only received one question on it, so if you could just touch on what the information is and answer the one question, the board can kind of go through the rest of this on their own.
So what you see in front of you is a 5-year summary of what courses did not have enough students in them to run per board policy 6:31 minimum course enrollment. So these are courses that did not meet the 20 threshold for us to bring them to the board for board approval. It's important to note that in wellness, we don't use that 20 as a threshold, we use a 40 because wellness classes are higher. So you're gonna be able to see by department what courses students signed up for but were not necessarily able to run. I will say this, over the past 5 years, there have been courses that our teaching staff, our counseling staff know are not gonna run, right? Historically, I use teaching internship as an example at my leadership council meeting today. So a student that sat in front of a counselor in 2017 and said, I wanna take teaching internship, I would venture to say I'm 95% certain that counselor would know the history of RB enough to know that, say to that student, that class isn't gonna run. And I think that speaks to one of the questions that one of the board members asked in terms of there are kids that may have wanted some of these courses that don't appear on this document because there has been a tradition of certain classes not running. With course requests this year, especially since we started doing them around the time that this question was asked and we were asked for this data, Beth told her team, if any student says they want anything on the books, write it down, so that we have a more true picture really for this year of what students are asking for in terms of what they want to take and what may or may not be able to have those numbers to run. Those numbers won't be done until we finish all of our course requests, which will be not until January, but I just wanted to let you know that that's a measure that we took to really make sure we're truly capturing this picture. I will say in terms of the question, which might I recommend taking off? That has never been a me conversation. It's always been a team discussion with our leadership council, our building administration, our instructional coaches. And I actually do come to the board in second semester to present it's curriculum council, where I present, these are the courses that our teachers, our instructional coaches, our leadership team are proposing that we add, as well as some that we're proposing that we take away. So that's a discussion that we need to have as a leadership team to talk about which of these courses should be ones that sort of come off the books, so that we can then bring those options to the board and get your blessing. It's not ever something that I would just go through and say, you know what, world percussion, I'm taking it out, because the curriculum guide is a document that exists at the behest of the board because it structures our curriculum. So any of these courses that we would consider taking off the books, we would formally propose to the Board of Education with a rationale of why we would want to see those come off.
I think the concern from the board was, are kids being led to believe there's all these options when there's not?
Right, and I think it's a chicken and egg type situation, right? So I think it's, parents, students look at the curriculum guide and think they have these options that are not options. I'm pleased to hear the direction being pushed out to the counselors about what is available, and I think maybe there's a further step of, do we want our teachers to advocate for certain classes with students who might be interested in world percussion or whatever example you use? Because I think there's some of this is, you may not know, you look at your curriculum guide as an 8th grader, maybe as a freshman, do you look at it again when you're a sophomore or a junior, or you've been told by your counselor for 2 years, it's never going to run, right? Sure. So how do we kind of break that pattern and get accurate numbers? Do we really have a group that's interested in world percussion? And in which case, then we need to support it, right? And if we're at the bubble, if we're in that 17, 18 range with your February report, we should be able to acknowledge that. Because when we're saying, 2 people
Right.
we're never going to have that discussion here.
Right,
So
and 4 out of 5 years is canceled.
Right, so, the consensus from anybody who walks through the building is we're never gonna offer it. It's all kind of, we're not being transparent about it. So I think we need to be transparent, and I think we need to track these and understand what's really available and where's their interest. So it's not just at the counselor level, I'm guessing.
Yes.
It's gonna be at the teacher level as
Yes.
well. I've
And
got
our
a kid who
teachers
really.
we have teachers that put presentations together for their specific classes, right? So the woman in our history department who teaches AP European history is able to do some outreach to students because she has a presentation already that's packaged to talk about what is AP, what is AP US history or AP European history. For example, James Baum takes the rock band to lunch and they perform at lunch, and that's exposure for them, right? He get on the microphone and say, if you want to join rock band, like this is the kind of stuff that you're going to be doing. So, and we also offer opportunities for, especially our fine arts teachers, our world language teachers, our applied arts teachers, to visit with the middle schools, to let them know these are the kind of things that we do in Spanish. This is what that looks like if you take a German course, and here are the benefits that you can have. So our teachers do a nice job of really letting people know what courses are out there and recruit, so to speak, for certain courses. But to your point, absolutely, I completely understand what you're saying in terms of we want to tell families that you can take these courses, and we want them to be able to kind of do that in good faith. Right?
And I'm sure some teachers are going to be better advocates than others,
Sure.
right? So, this needs to be a uniform approach in terms of here's what's in the curriculum guide. Take advantage of what's out there, and then if we're sitting here in February saying this has not ever reached critical mass for 6 years, that's a different discussion.
Well, especially, the clear trend that I see is that it's between applied arts and fine arts.
Yes.
And as somebody in the field, it pains me to
Yeah.
see that. And so, I know of one high school on the north side where they have, I think every 2 years, they have something called Weekend for the Arts.
Oh, okay.
And it's a big cultural thing. This isn't going to change overnight either, but I'll be very interested to hear from the community about what do you think about the fact that the arts are, they're behind, it seems like, other things.
When we had a conversation today along that line, one of the classes that jumps out at us is when we look at this are any of the AP classes, right? Those are the ones that really jump out at us of not being able to offer students. And, we talked with our instructional coach for fine arts, Aubrey Prince, talking about music theory, AP music theory, and she said, you're never going to go to a school that is going to have 25 kids in 1 year that want to take AP music theory.
Right.
It's a very specialized class, right? And those students who take AP music theory are doing so because they see themselves in a future in music. She talked about when she was in high school, she was in an AP music theory class with 3 kids. So maybe even looking at how we can strategically put some offerings together that capitalize on that, like what you were saying, on an every other year basis or something of that nature, if we really want to value those experiences for kids.
Kylie, we gotta get this moving with the agenda, because I have the auditor that needs to present the audit. But
Is he burning a hole in the back of my head with his eyes?
one thing,
Trust me, this is a lot more fun.
One thing I would say to you.
That was rough. He was rough on you. It was rough on you.
I think that this may lend itself to something that Laura has brought up in the past, like seeing these classes. Is that something the board needs to look at going forward with the specific, the way we have specific graduation requirements, and do we need to open those more to electives, a different, is that something that needs to be reviewed from the board and from feedback from the community that, the students that want to take more courses aligned with AP and academics can, and the kids that want to take more applied arts and arts, right? That's always been your push, right, of the graduation requirements.
We need a core, and then we need to have options. We need to have that
doing some
core, like
online
minimum
learning. Is
fit
there a way
and
to
options.
have some independent study class where
We talked about that
he's
today,
doing
too.
the AP music theory, he's doing the world percussion, and and rock band, they can help, it'll fill up that. But you could have those kids at one. You take 3 different classes and put them into one, and all of a sudden you have 20 kids, and then we justify spending the money for an instructor.
Sure.
Because that's really, at the end of the day, we're talking about, spending the money for an instructor.
Yes.
Right, so if we can fill 20 with 3 and 4 independent, or 3 independent studies, it does that work, and I don't know what that looks like.
Right, because there's the star that says teacher cannot be secured for course, right? So there are some things that kids want to do
We
that
couldn't
we
secure a
just
teacher.
don't have the manpower.
And no one, in that particular
No
case,
one-
we are certainly not alone. That's all across Illinois.
Right.
With that shortage.
But I mean, if you
yes,
have a
you're right.
shortage of failing and consumer science teachers, and RB as a single school district is only offering 3 sections, and someone down the road is offering 5 sections because either their enrollment's bigger or their class minimum is smaller, that teacher that is available is going to take the full-time job over the part-time.
Sure, sure, but that's why I'm saying perhaps some sort of online option
Sure.
would be of value to.
I can certainly look into that.
Kylie, great job as always.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions before we ask Kylie?
Before you politely ask me to get out of the
Get out.
room and stop talking.
Or you
I
can stay.
read
I thought,
between
are
those
you
lines.
staying for the auditor report? No.
And I think I'm not going to.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kylie.
Why, you haven't been here since
I think I'm going to
7
bow
a.m.?
out for gracefully.
Well, you're missing the fun.
Thank you very much.
Kristen, you want to introduce the auditor and the audit report?
Sure.
Thanks, Kylie.
I'd ask that Chris from Evans, Marshall, and Pease come up. He is going to present our audit, which begins on page 66 of Board Book. He also has received the board's questions and plans to incorporate those into his presentation tonight.
Chris, thank you for your patience.
Yeah, not a problem. I was just gonna say, I recommend the accounting 2 course that no one takes up there. Get some better hires at my firm. But
We'll give them an internship.
apparently people aren't taking accounting, so. I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. Again, my name is Chris Scalette. I am the junior partner for Evans, Marshall, and Pease. It's my 11th year doing school district audits. I've been here, it's probably 4 or 5 years now. For the audit report, I always like to start with the district's financial profile score from IASB because it helps monitor the district's finances and also identifies which school districts in Illinois are in or are moving towards financial difficulty. The highest attainable score is 4. This fiscal year, School District 208 received a score of 3.8, which was the same as the previous year. The district's score has been consistent over the last 6 fiscal years. This score is recognition, which is the highest score for financial strength. The financial profile score was developed by school superintendents, business administrators, advisors, lawyers, and bond brokers throughout the state. The score is based off of 5 financial profile indicators, the first being fund balance to revenue ratio, which we score a top in the first 4 that I'm going to read off, and then the 5th one is what keeps us from becoming a 4. So then you have expenditure to revenue ratio, days cash on hand, percent of short-term borrowing, ability remaining, and then the 5th would be percent of long-term debt margin remaining. This score the district has received and continues to receive symbolizes the outstanding job that the business office does on an ongoing day-to-day basis. From the board's oversight to Dr. Skinkis, to now Kristen, and the wonderful ladies in the office, this score should not go unnoticed. The score is very difficult to maintain consistently. Dr. Skinkis and the entire business office have done a wonderful job to achieve this. I want to personally thank Dr. Skinkis, Kristen, and the business department for their continuous hard work. For the audit this year, I did not run into any audit or internal control issues, as Kristen has done a wonderful job overseeing her first audit. The district has increased its operating fund balance from about $15.3 million in fiscal 2013 to about $25.5 million at the end of fiscal year 2019. This has resulted in a significantly improved cash flow. The district finished the year with an operating surplus of approximately $441,000, driven by admin oversight and close monitoring of the budget. The district continues to improve its building and facilities to be flexible provide up-to-date learning spaces while still delivering relevant and dynamic educational experiences. At this time, I'll answer some board questions that were previously submitted to me. I know I answered a few already, and then I will do my best to answer any other questions that the board might have. One of the questions I had was in the management discussion and analysis. There's a
Chris, and you got a page of where Chris is referring to?
that would be. I can.
Just so.
Board
sure.
Even on your audit page, Kristen.
Yeah, audit. It's audit page 11.
Okay, so that's board book, I think, 82. Factors affecting the district's future.
It's going to be the second from the bullet. It's not a bullet point, but paragraph up where it talks about the persistent climate of the state's economy is a continual concern. The state's ability to properly fund education is more questionable now than at any time in recent years. The reason why this is in here is that, the State Board of Education is roughly 7 months behind payments, right? And unfortunately, the way our state works is everything's reimbursement driven. So we spend and we have to wait for our reimbursement. So we're obviously now waiting 7 months to get our money back that we had already spent. Obviously, this makes it difficult to budget because we don't really know when we're going to receive the money. And as I've been doing this for years, the state really keeps dragging its feet. It seemed like last year they kind of picked it up some, but again, this year went right back to where it was before. So that's kind of where this comment led. Hopefully it changes, but obviously, you're almost at the burden of the property taxpayers. And then, when you receive those monies and we can live off that, it makes things easier to budget and do things in the district that we need to do, obviously to, privately serve the students, because that's what we're here for. Another question, it's about the pension liability. I'm not going to really point out in the note. The pension notes have gotten extreme. That increased about $900,000. The reason for this is there's two pension studies that are done. One, IMRF is done on a calendar year basis, which is December. TRS does theirs actually a whole fiscal year behind, so we're reporting June 30 of 19. TRS actually reports as of 18. So there's a 6 month or year gap in these studies. At the time of when these studies were being done, the stock market was very volatile at that point in time. So the market was kind of moving up and down, and when these studies were being performed, the market was lower, therefore increasing the pension liability, obviously, because all the retirement savings in that bucket, value goes down, increases the potential liability. I believe the other question.
Is that liability to the district, or is that one of those GATA laws where the district just has to have that on their audit, so in the event that cost shift ever came down, we would be aware?
Correct. Yeah, the pension liability numbers in the audit report is not something that is currently due. This is based off an actuarial study that says in case IMRF or TRS went under, the district would be obviously liable to pay for that portion of the pension. So this is not something that's due currently. It's more of just a note disclosure that just puts this forecast in the future. To be honest, these pension numbers have gotten extreme, and from what I'm hearing going forward on a GASB basis, which is the standards, Government Accounting Standards Board, they're looking to now streamline these to shorten them, because these audit reports have gotten to the point where people aren't reading them because they can't understand what we're reading. A lot of the stuff I get is given to me from actuaries, and sometimes I don't even know what they're giving me. I'm just putting them in the notes because that's what I'm supposed to do. And that makes it difficult for me to explain to boards what's in here, because I'm not an actuary. So hopefully they can streamline these things just to make it easier for me and for me to be able to explain these things, because the actuary that's writing these reports, unfortunately, can't sit next to me every time I have to present to a board. So.
Can you repeat the time frame real quick on the IMRF versus TRS actuarial year?
Sure. So IMRF is reported calendar year. So for this audit report, it had been 12/31/18. TRS is one full year behind, so their actuarial report was as of 6/30/18.
6/30/18, okay.
And then another question I had was the effects of health insurance in past years. Not exactly sure how much in detail I should go, but just from looking at the audit report, I know there's a schedule in there that kind of just talks about our benefit trend costs. and they've been rising. Well, just without digging super deep, the only thing that I could say is that, over the past 5 years, staffing has increased at the district. Obviously, if staffing increases, that puts a burden as a benefit liability, therefore obviously would increase employee benefits. So, the more FTEs we have, the more people that are eligible to receive health insurance and benefits, obviously therefore increasing the benefit costs. I think I answered everything that was provided to me, and then if the board has any questions, I'm obviously willing to do my best to try to answer.
So in summary, no material findings.
No material findings, no management letter, unmodified audit opinion, which is a clean opinion, which has page 1 of the audit report, I believe. My page number, yes.
Just wanted you to say it on the record.
I understand.
I would say, good job.
Any other questions for Chris? Kristen, anything?
No.
Chris, thank you very much. Sorry you had a...
Kristen, thank you. Good job.
Kristen, good job. Your first audit.
No, she really did a good job for her first audit too, not necessarily with the financial background, but very proud of her for being able to get through this, so. She really
Great.
deserves credit. So.
Will be a reduction in your fee then?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chris. Keep up the good work. Kristen, thank you for your help with this. Kristen, you have another report you want to touch on, right?
Yes, I have several. So I'd ask that the board go to board book page 26. This is the monthly summary report, and the financial information that I'm presenting is for September 2019, so this represents 25% of our fiscal year, the first quarter. So the report on board book page 26 is just for the month of September, and as you can see, the total revenue for the month was a little over $800,000, and almost all of it was operating revenue, and a large portion of the revenue, as you can see, comes from local revenue this month. So those are things such as course fees, athletic admission, registration fees, etc., and then 23% of our revenue coming from evidence-based funding this month. The total expenditures for the month were a little shy of $2 million, with a majority, again, being operating expenditures. As you can see from the pie chart, a majority of our expenditures this month, 82%, were towards salary and benefits, with 5% towards building level supplies and 5% towards special education tuition.
On the evidence-based funding, how far behind are we? We just heard from the auditor that they had gone back to some old habits.
So evidence-based funding, we are not currently behind. All the other state funding is
Okay.
what we are behind on.
Okay,
That's the one thing that they have been keeping up with, which is new. Last year and this year is the first year they've really been keeping up with that. On board book, page 28 begins the monthly financial statements. Well, it's page 2 of it, but I want to highlight the revenue analysis. So this shows that we have received to date 42% of our revenue that we've budgeted for, and this amount is equivalent to where we were last year. So we're tracking really well in regards to revenue. On the next page in board book, you'll see our expenditure analysis, and the district has spent 26% of the budgeted expenditures for this year compared to 24% last year. The 2% is probably accounted for the pool project that we've just completed, which was over $800,000. And then also, like we include every month, I've included the statement of revenue and expenditure report for the month, as well as student activity account summary. So that those two reports just provide a detailed accounting on all of the accounts that are in both board book or board accounts as well as activity accounts. Additional reports this month, the first one would be the first quarter paid building rentals, and that begins on board book page 45. I want to stress the word paid because we only include the building rentals in first quarter that have actually paid. And so this quarter report shows that building rentals have generated a little over $27,000 in revenue and $5,000 in expenses. resulting in a surplus of about $21,000 or $22,000. And this surplus is used to offset any costs for maintaining the facilities or for operating the facilities as well. This quarter, a majority of the revenue came from the Aquatic Center. This payment is primarily from last fiscal year, which is why we were short last fiscal year. It's common that this is kind of the timing for that this rental group, but that's also why their invoice is significantly higher than all of the other venues as well. The $27,000 that we've received in revenue for paid building rentals is approximately 30% of what we have budgeted for. So, we're on track to probably meet budget, again, accounting for the fact that we received a large payment in the Aquatic Center. On board book page 50, I included the life safety update that Dr. Skinkis had referenced before. So yesterday, the Facilities Advisory Council met and they reviewed this attached summary. As you can see, we have 81 items from Amendment 22, 3 from the previous life safety amendment, which are the roof projects that Dr. Skinkis was referring to, and we have completed 86 of the projects already. Joel and his team from Aramark really do a phenomenal job to complete a lot of these projects on their own. And as a result, they save a lot of money. So they've saved approximately $460,000. That's then used to offset bigger projects, especially when some of the bigger projects come in kind of above what we were anticipating them coming in. So this summer, we anticipate completing the remaining roof projects, as well as some handrails. And then we will be working with DLA this fall on plans and bid timelines for the roof project. We'll be updating the board accordingly. And then a late addition that was also covered at the Facilities Advisory Council meeting is on board book page 51, and Dr. Skinkis referenced this as well. This is the Operations and Maintenance Business Review from Aramark, and this provides an overview of all of the work that they do around RB. And so we try to provide this to the board 3 or 4 times a year. So some of you may have seen this before. Again, I apologize for just including it into board book now, but I want to highlight 2 things. On board book page 56 is a summary of all of the projects that Aramark has completed over the summer. A large project that they had been working on this summer was lighting and changing the lighting to LED lighting. And they did all of the second floor corridor as well as the field house and the East Gym and the gymnastics room. They also redid the gymnastics floor and then used that wood to then fix the auditorium in the wings of the stage. There was some wood that needed to be replaced backstage, and so they used that wood and kind of repurposed it to replace that. So Aramark always does a great job of figuring out how they can save money and repurpose things. And then on the last page of the report, something that we discussed at the Facility Advisory Council was some of the work that Aramark has done and Dr. Skinkis has done with lighting over the past several years. They've worked really hard to put lights on timers and change them to LED lights. And so not only did we receive money from the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity for some incentives to reduce the project costs over the several years, we're also using less energy as well. So we wanted to highlight that. And then lastly, I don't have a report in board book for this, but last Thursday, October 17th, we held our annual wellness screening for staff members. EBC, our insurance cooperative, offers an incentive of 0.5% of the district's annual projected premium if we have over 50% of the insured staff complete the wellness screening. We've never accomplished this in the past. Last year, we had 38 staff members complete the screening. This year, we had 99 staff members show up on the day of, and then we'll have, I don't have anything else to show you for it. And then we'll have 2 more go to the lab. So we'll have 101 staff members that have completed the screening, so we'll be able to earn that incentive this year for the district. And then staff members also had the opportunity to receive a flu shot, and we had over 80 staff members participate in that as well.
So what do you equate the RISE
almost triple the number of people.
So this year I worked to include some additional incentives. So we offered breakfast since you have to fast before the wellness screening, as well as I grouped different departments together so that they were equal in number, and the department or group with the highest percentage earned a pizza party. And then we are holding, now that we have accomplished the number that we were looking for, we were able to hold a raffle as well. And the RBA was able to contribute some raffle prizes additionally. I also worked with the RBA to figure out why staff weren't taking advantage of it in the past to address some of those issues. So we moved the wellness screening up so that people who play basketball in the morning could come and take advantage of this at 6 a.m. before going to play basketball. So, I want to thank the RBA because they were really great in partnering with me to try to reach this incentive.
That's a good job.
And that concludes the Assistant Superintendent report.
Thanks, Kristen. Good job.
All right, visitor statements.
All right, we got some people you got to read then.
Okay, I got to read my little statement here. The Board of Education welcomes and encourages the participation of its citizens in the business of school district. There are 2 points in the meeting where visitor statements are scheduled. Citizens are welcome to raise questions or make comments at either one. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and cannot be combined. Please note the Board of Education will not answer questions or engage in dialogue during visitor comments. If a person would like additional time to address the board, such a request should be submitted in writing 48 hours before the meeting to the superintendent. Okay.
Dave, come up.
And the first time in 30 years I've closed out a board meeting. I don't think I've ever had that happen before.
I don't think we're even halfway done.
I'm David Monti, 9034 Fairview Avenue in Brookfield, and I hope the board would give me a little bit more than 3 minutes, as I've been here for 2 hours almost. I hope I'm not taking anybody else's time, just yours, and I appreciate that very much. So first of all, again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here this evening as a concerned taxpayer after hearing some shocking news on October 10th, which was the second to last day of the first quarter. And it was something that in good conscience I couldn't ignore. I needed to come and say something. And so again, I appreciate the opportunity tonight to speak to you. On that morning, I was informed that all 6 honors chemistry classes here at RB have had 28 students in each one of those classes since the very first day of the quarter. So the entire first quarter, those classes have had 28 students, which exceeds our school's current cap of 27 students per science class. After confirming that this was true, because I didn't believe it, I was also informed that the 6 regular chemistry classes have 2 sections at 27, 3 sections at 26, and 1 at 25, and that one has gone up to 26 since that conversation. And this is disconcerting to me for several reasons. First of all, there are only 24 lab stations in each one of our renovated classrooms. And there are 2 additional stations that are wheelchair accessible, but they do not have gas jets, and so they're not full stations, especially in a chemistry class. The second thing is there have been numerous studies published in my 30-year science teaching career about lab safety and overcrowding by organizations such as the National Science Teachers Association, the National Fire Protection Association, OSHA, and the National Research Council, which is on best practices of education. All of those studies show that lab classes over 24 students have higher rates of accidents, which can result in serious injury. The third thing, and I think this is the most important one, is labs are an essential part of any essential science curriculum, successful science curriculum, and they require a higher level of teacher-student interaction. The fewer students there are in lab, the easier it is for a teacher to clarify procedures, answer questions, assist students in honing their problem-solving and reasoning skills. When labs are overcrowded, it is extremely difficult for any teacher, no matter how talented that teacher may be, to go around and meet the needs of each student. The quality of the science education decreases and safety concerns increase. It's also extremely difficult to spark science interest and future career scientists in an overcrowded class. The last thing is every year we have students that transfer to RB from either parochial schools or from or families that are new to the district. Where would we place a student today who transfers to RB and who's in the honors chemistry class from their former school? Would we have a class of 29? Would we deny that child the education that they deserve and place them in a class that's beneath their intellect and their abilities? In the past, there have been board and administrative decisions made based on policies and procedures that some may question as not best practice for education. With 3 newly elected board members and a new principal, I would like to take a few minutes to share with you some of that history. And if we truly want to be an excellent high school that provides an equitable and enriching educational experience for all of our students, I hope you will revisit these practices and decisions. The first one is the calculation of the full-time employee number, or FTE. This is usually made in November, even though student course registration for the upcoming year is not completed until sometime in January. How is it possible to calculate the number of employees we're going to need for next year if we do not know how many students we will have and in what courses? And what about the annual students who transfer into the district? Every summer, we have students that move into the district, and our student services department keeps excellent records on those. It would seem important and prudent to budget for extra FTE to accommodate that space for those annual transfers. And right now, all those classes are at their maximum or over. Second, the Board of Education needs to look seriously at its educational fund balance policy. As a taxpayer, this one disturbs me. I couldn't find it anywhere on the Illinois State Board of Education website, but it used to be the IASB recommended that districts reserve 33% of their money in an educational fund, which can then be tapped when additional money is needed. So, and please correct me if I'm misunderstanding this, if a resident's annual property taxes collected by the district were $10,000, the IASB is saying $3,300 of that should be saved and $6,700 of that should be spent on the operation of the school district. Am I correct on that? At the previous board meeting on October 8th, the Landmark reported that we have about $19.5 million in our education fund balance, with an additional $2.9 million in working cash, which gives us a total of $22.4 million. The Landmark also reported that that total cash reserve is 58.74% of our annual operating expenditures. And yet the IASB recommends 33%, which would be $11.09 million if my calculations are correct. So our current ed fund balance is over twice the state's recommendation. I know that the ed fund balance has been built up over several years. It's been what our board has done. But if we go back to my tax example, it's like a resident is paying $10,000 and $4,100 is being spent on the student and $5,900 is being saved for a rainy day. Now, the issue that I'm here for tonight is it's a rainy day. At the end of the first quarter, all 6 of those classes in honors chemistry still have 28 students in them. And if we trust the expertise of the NSTA and all those other educational organizations, if we subtracted 4 kids from each of those sections, that would give us an additional section of 24 more students. So we would have 7 sections of 24. And on the RB website, a first-year teacher salary is $55,000. So to hire a teacher for .2 would cost this district $11,000. And we have $22.4 million in our savings account for a rainy day. A master's degree would be $12,000 a class. A veteran teacher with 15 years of experience would be about $22,000 a class. And if you do the math, $11,000 out of $22.4 million is 0.00049%. This is a minute expenditure that would secure not only more equitable and educational experience for each of the 168 honors chemistry students, but would also reduce the risk of injury in lab. For another 11,000, we could add another .2 teacher for all the regular chemistry classes, and that would better the experience for all of those students as well. And I know that the issue of overcrowded classes is not unique just for science, but when it comes to lab safety, especially science and applied arts, safety must be addressed. So, in conclusion, I've been here since 1990. I was a graduate student and then a substitute teacher in October of 1990. I've been here ever since. Those of you whose children I've taught, those of you who I've worked with and worked for, you know that I bleed Bulldog Blue. This is my home. This is my family. I moved here 11 years ago so that my two children could go here. They're both RB graduates, and I can share a lot of college information with you about those if you would like that information. And I understand the necessity of being fiscally responsible. I listened to that audit and the delays and the payments, and I get that. But we're sitting on more than double a savings of what we should have. And I know it's important, but we're also entrusted in educating the children of our taxpayers and preparing them the best for their future. And we have a duty to that, to make sure that they get the best education for when they leave this place and go on into the future world. And I know that resources are limited. I know that some schools struggle with their resources, but right now we have 22.4 million resources that are just sitting there. And for 11,000 or for 22,000, we can make a big difference in our students' education.
Thank you,
So
Dave.
thank you so much for your time and attention. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. All right, discussion information items. At this point in the meeting, Board of Education members may request to add an additional discussion item. All right. My left. Okay. Discussion items, consideration of adding the school student board member.
I think this is something that, since the board's tentative date, it's going to be sometime in February, that maybe we want to start to vet out a little bit, I think, with some of the historical information we provided from a few other districts, and there didn't seem to be any feedback on opposing a student board member for the 2020-21 school year, that maybe this is something we start to vet out a process so that maybe we can open it up to Dr. Freitas and myself and the other leaders in the building to start to vet candidates for a student board member seat for next school year. I don't know if this is something that I don't think the community would be actively opposed against. And I want to make sure we provide ourselves enough time so kids can consider the obligation that it entails, but also the process to select a candidate.
And did we did we find a model that we liked? There were several models. Some models were just for the months that students were in school, where they were not expected to come during the summer months. And,
That's why I would like to get moving on this.
yeah.
The main thing was that all the research that we did, they do select a senior. It's select the spring before the senior year. Some schools had a female and a male student. Some schools just had one. They only no school allowed their student to participate in closed session.
Right.
They only received the open session. They had a chair at the table, and they were commonly referred to in, large discussion items similar to chemistry staffing or course offerings, etc. But I'd like the board to start thinking about this. Maybe we can go into since it's been a long night already, have a little more in-depth conversation maybe in November so that I can start to put some things together with the building administration so that we can maybe start the process as early as sometime second semester.
So do you want to put together, or yourself or an idea with, what that looks like?
Sure, I can do that.
Then we can vet that out in November. We can say, well, whether we like the 2 or the 1 or
Okay.
the school session. I think it's, I don't want to say it's easier to change something than to build it, but I think if you come with some ideas, then we can vet that out and come up with a pretty good idea, because I do agree we need to get going on the first thing in the new year, right? Because you're going to want to identify that student and get the right people in place, and that's a process in itself, right? And whether it's elections or how you want to do that, I think that's something we need to vet.
Yeah, I would obviously very much support that, and especially because it was brought up as an idea, knowing that this has been done in other schools and so forth, and it seemed to make a lot of sense, at least to me. But if we could cross the threshold where we actually engage the administration and even students, I mean, you guys know the school, much better than certainly I do, and so just even then gauging the level of interest or the other issues that might come up that we might not even be thinking of, I'd love to see that, because ultimately that will lead to an actual decision based on a true proposal. Up to this point, it's still just an idea, so I'd love to see that.
Right. So if we did that
We can start discussing a proposal. I'll bring a proposal in November, which should help spur some more discussion. And then that gives me till December to tweak it again.
Right, and then we'll have to vote on it maybe in December or the first thing in January. We'll have to think about how that looks, but.
Yeah, I don't even know if we would have to vote on the process, as long as the board gives me the go-ahead to start a vetting process of what we agree upon there. At the end of the day, maybe the board approves who the student board member is at the end of the process.
Okay.
Right, it's more of like a sign-in work to the administration, so I mean, it's not a formal vote, it's just, if I put together the process and we could discuss it over November and December, we can hit the ground running second semester.
Right.
And advertising, vetting, whether we do a student election process. Okay? Is everybody okay with that? Okay?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. IASB 2019 resolutions.
The board received these resolutions. I did not receive any questions. Laura, did you receive any questions?
I didn't. We could take 30 seconds just to, I'll go through. I do want to bring up the first one, make sure that we're clear. Is it all right if we just quickly go through that?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so student safety resolution number 1, the IASB, or the recommendation is do adopt. Does anybody have any contention or disagreement with that?
Yes.
I do.
Yes, I
do
oppose
too.
it. So I would like to bring up, because this happened last time, we have an SRO. We have somebody who carries a gun on site. We have that. But if we oppose that, what we are saying is we oppose the IASB supporting other districts who say they don't have availability to an SRO, a school resource officer.
Well, Laura, if I could interrupt though, that's resolution 3, not resolution 1.
No, it's also resolution 1.
No, resolution 1 is about teachers and administrators being able to carry. Resolution 3 is about a grant program that would allow a school who did not have access to an SRO to fund an SRO. That's how I read the two resolutions.
But resolution 1 is not only teachers allowed to carry, it says plans which will allow voluntarily district employee.
But
So
it's
it
not
could
an
be
SRO.
one person. So the example was, so the school that proposed it, I'm just letting you know, last year, there was an ex-Marine who was a district employee, served this country, and he was a retired Marine. And he had all the appropriate credentials, and all of this proposal is saying is that would we give a school district the ability to develop a plan where they could allow somebody in their district to act as an SRO?
So I don't quite agree with that interpretation of the resolution. I think there's my read of the IASB documents is that the school safety grant program that item number 3 was intended as more of a compromise because item number 1 had not received a lot of traction at the state conference in prior years. I guess my perspective is you've got 18 different positions that the IASB is looking for a vote on, plus a policy handbook of probably 60 other positions, right? And so in terms of resources and advocacy for this group, some of these to me are rise to the top of where I'd like to see IASB put their resources. I don't know what their relative success is on some of these things, but they're talking about the positions related to special ed program funding and state full reimbursement. Those are items that perhaps would be of more importance to this district. And I know we're not being asked to scale them, but still, I can't support the student safety item despite the IASB's recommendation. Because what they're saying is they want to support legislation in Springfield. There's only so many bills that move any legislative session. And so to support this one at the expense of some other one, I just can't do that.
No, what this one is saying is they want to support school districts. There are 800 districts, the ability to develop their own plan. That's what this one is saying.
No, it's saying they want to support legislation in Springfield to allow school districts to support their own plan.
To plan, right.
So that's a lobbying effort. So this is we're being asked to identify how to spend IASB's lobbying time and efforts. And I'm not in support of IASB as an organization that we pay considerable dues to, our district supporting that particular resolution. That's my position.
Okay, and I will just say, as have gone to these meetings, and whatever this board, I will carry that forward, or whoever goes. There are 800 districts, and the districts in the South are begging for this ability to develop a plan because they don't have the resources we have. We have somebody here that walks around with a gun. We can call the police, and police are here in 30 seconds. There are hundreds of districts in this state that a policeman is not going to arrive in an hour because they are so rural. And those districts are begging the 800 other districts to allow them to develop a plan to protect their kids. And so that's just us saying we're going to trust other districts that don't have the resources we do because we live in a big city to develop a plan. That's what this one's about. But we have everything here, and so we're like, no, we don't need that. But if we didn't have everything, if we lived where it would take an hour for a policeman to come, or there's only 2 policemen in the entire county, how would we feel?
But I understand, because Laura, you brought it up at the last meeting, that it is being framed as an issue of local control.
Yes.
And there are so many instances where local control makes perfect sense. I mean, it's typically much more, to the point, effective, and so forth. For me, it's actually both both number 1, school safety, and number 3 is a matter of, nobody debates that security is key for any of these institutions, but I believe that in a case like this, that this requires a higher level of scrutiny, and there is no reason why any school district or jurisdiction anywhere in the state could address this through raising money through other sources and increasing the police department. I just have a fundamental problem with the idea that schools and school boards end up participating in law enforcement when schools exist to educate people, and law enforcement can be provided. It's a matter of choices that we make by they could hire more police officers. And so I think on something, the gun epidemic and the studies that show that guns do not make students safer, it adds an additional risk, which is that accidents can happen. And so based on the evidence, everything I'm reading, I just think this is something that overall we should not support, and I'm not in support of either of these.
But you're okay with us having an armed person in our school and knowing that there are guns within 2 minutes?
No, I didn't say that. I'm not necessarily for a person with a
Okay.
gun in this school.
So-
I think that's something we might want to discuss also, but since that's not on the, we're talking about these specific ones, and I can't, as a matter of principle, support it.
You want to speak?
No.
You've said your piece?
Yes, I oppose it.
Oh, you have any thoughts? No. All right, I'll give everybody time, I think.
Okay,
Laura
so
said her speak,
So the district would oppose.
I think we need to take a little straw poll. Those in favor,
So I would support, but the rest of you,
and then those opposed.
I would oppose.
so you guys would say oppose on that one, okay.
Yeah, I'm with Tom on this one, and I think I was the only one that asked Lane not to have a gun, but, so, I'm kind of with Tom on this one.
Okay, on number 2, the recommendation is adopt. And this just allows, if the district wanted to have a social goal, that some of our contracts are either by, companies owned by veterans, and maybe they weren't the lowest bidder or something. The way I read this is that would open an option for a district to be able to hire them and not be forced to take the lowest bidder.
Are you looking to go through each of these individually, Laura? Because I didn't get any feedback from any of the board members that they.
Well, I didn't get any feedback on number 1, and number 1 said, do adopt, and apparently that was not what people were thinking, so.
So on number 2, it says that's a preference. Is the school board going to give a preference to?
So I think it's
I'm
important that
little-
these are all positions of what IASB would support legislatively in Springfield. So none of these become
Law.
law.
Right.
Right, this is about how their lobbying dollars
Right.
get utilized.
Right.
So it's a minority women, veterans-owned preference program. It would allow districts to put that type of program into their procurement process.
I got you, okay.
So do you want to support that?
Well, what a better way maybe to go through is there any ones that the board is against what the IASB is supporting?
Okay,
Maybe that's a better way, since we didn't receive any feedback, right?
yeah, right?
So the
Because-
board, IASB was supporting number 1 and the board is against that.
Right, ISB is supporting number 2. Does the,
Any problems with 2?
no. Number 3, ISB is supporting that.
Tom is shaking his head, so we have 1 opposed. Is there anybody else opposed to 3?
I'm not opposed. Anybody else opposed?
Deanna?
I am not opposed. I think this was a good
Ramona?
compromise position.
Okay, so we can go with
we're
that,
good
okay?
with that.
Number 4,
Any concerns?
ISD
None.
is, okay, that's fine.
5?
5, go at
concerns.
ISB. Okay. Number 6, the traffic zones, is anybody against ISB's recommendation?
No?
Okay, 7, the seating of new members.
No?
No,
objection.
okay. 8, swearing in.
So IASB opposed this one, as my notes say.
Yep.
On which one?
Number 8?
Swearing in.
Right, so do we want to agree with ISB? And so it gets funny, do we want to support their position to do not? So a school district sent in this resolution and would like the ISB to support this, and the ISB is recommending that we do not support this. Are we going to go along with the ISB and not adopt? Recommend that you do not adopt it for number 8.
Does anybody have resistance to IASB's recommendation? I think we should.
Right, the ISB's recommendation.
Okay, no?
Okay. 9, terms, school board election terms.
Any objection?
No objection.
Number 10 is an interesting one. It has come up before. It's compensation. ISB is saying they don't support that.
Any objection?
No objection.
Okay, no objection, okay. The charter schools, number 11, that could be contentious, however you feel, because you'll hear a lot of testimony. Charter schools are funded by the same tax dollars that fund your public schools. IASB has been in support, and they're recommending do adopt. What is the purview of the board?
I agree.
No objection?
Okay? Number 12, it's the charter schools for at-risk students.
No objection.
Okay. Number 13, again, I think this is kind of interesting. It's a prevailing wage. This has come a couple of times. They're recommending that we adopt this, and this is allowing schools to get, I think, start to get away from the prevailing wage that the Department of Labor from the state sets. So that's kind of an interesting argument, because you can't have a local carpenter come and fix the doors who's going to charge a different price. You have to go along with the state prevailing wage. And then so in some ways, schools need labor. And by having this law now as it is, the state is guaranteeing some like union jobs. Whereas this could start to open the door for other contractors to come in that might not be charging that rate.
Any objection to the IASB?
I do not agree with the IASB statement.
One opposed. Anybody else opposed?
Okay, so we'll go with their recommendation. Okay. A positional statement 14, it's just a,
These are all just position statements.
yeah.
I have no objection to any of the IASB recommendations for the rest of them, and if anyone else does.
Anybody else?
I do not.
Nope.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks, Laura.
Old business, life safety items, capital improvements.
No update. I think we vetted that well.
New business, matters for closed session, personnel, student discipline, purchase, sale, lease, real, probable imminent pending litigation, collective negotiation, and school safety. Another point for visitor statements. One's in there. Here, discussion items. Consideration of items for future meetings. All right.
At the November board meeting, we do provide the board will see staffing projections. These are just projections, and they are revised based on the staffing enrollment numbers we receive in January. So you will receive that report. We also do provide the class size report again, so we'll make sure that's included in the enrollment and staffing projections, as well as current class sizes, so that the board, I'm sure, will want to see the information Mr. Monty presented to the board. So I will make sure that's in the November staffing projection report. In September, when we did the update on enrollment, the current enrollment numbers show that we are overstaffed roughly by a teacher to a teacher and a half, based on enrollment projections and what we staffed at and what we're currently at. So it just may be that when they were assigning staff to sections, but I can look at that with Miss Augustine and Kylie Lindquist, who handled the staffing.
Can we also get the IASB or the fund balance recommendation? I feel like I've read a couple of different numbers, and maybe they've changed over time, especially with financial uncertainty, and maybe our auditors have a suggested number as opposed to IASB.
Okay.
I think there's an Illinois state code also that comes from, and I don't know that we're articulating that correctly. My understanding was the recommendation through the state was in addition to what you absolutely need to run for the year.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, we don't have 22 million in addition to what we need to run for the year.
I'll let Kristen speak to that, but I think we can touch on it.
Sure, I can pull the, I can verify the recommendation, but I would also say that the 58% does include the 2.9 million that we have in reserves that we've set aside for the field acquisition. So the that number is definitely lower when you take that out, because when we bonded for that we put that aside for a very specific purpose. So I feel like as we're having these discussions, that shouldn't be included in that conversation. But I will pull that and verify the number.
So probably one thing, future discussions, or even maybe after our retreat, we had the discussion on class size several years ago, and then we also had the discussion on class size for freshmen, because the research showed that prediction of graduation was how well you did freshman year. And many of the freshman classes stay very close, or they try to be very close to the 20. So
To be accurate, all 4 levels of classes now in core classes are at 25 with a maximum of 27.
Okay.
So that's probably where this lab course is pushing near the 26 or 27 and being at max capacity. Whether a transfer was added into the quarter, I could check with Beth on, but the board, yeah, over the last 5 years, the board has worked every year to add another grade. So sophomore core classes, math, science, English, junior core classes.
So we can look at those STEM, because 5 years ago, STEM wasn't as prominent. So we could take another look at science.
Yeah, it was, the number in science was supposed to be over 25, but sometimes there's not a clean break. So if you add a section, sometimes that goes to 12.
Right.
And so sometimes it was easier to maybe do the master schedule with a class of 27 or 26 instead of going 2 classes of 13, or 1 of 13 and 1 of 14. But I will make sure that's included in the staffing projections and enrollment projections.
Ready for a resolution?
Yep, resolution.
The Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois enters closed session for the purpose of considering appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, student discipline, purchase, sale, or lease of real property, probable, imminent, or pending litigation, collective negotiations, and school safety.
Second?
Second.
Mr. Jacobs had the second.
Mr. Durkin?
Yes.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.